So Mickey 17 was directed by Bong Joon-ho and it stars Robert Pattinson, Naomi Ackie, Stephen Yeun, Toni Collette, and Mark Ruffalo. And in this movie taking place in the near distant future, a man named Mickey becomes an expendable. And expendable is a job you do not want to have in this future because if you're an expendable, all you do is pretty much die. You are tested on, they run experiments on you, and when they get all their information, you're dead. So then they print out several clones of Mickey at various points, and after he dies, they have to print out a clone of him, and issues come out when one Mickey, Mickey 17, learns that he was mistakenly listed as dead, and there's a new Mickey out there, Mickey 18 out there, so clones are illegal in this society, and yeah, we have issues with this movie. So this is a movie that I was honestly really, really looking forward to. I loved Bong Joon-ho's last movie, Parasite, and I was so excited to see what kind of movie he was going to do next. And I heard he was doing this big movie with Warner Brothers, also involving this cast, including Robert Pattinson, who I've grown to really enjoy as an actor over the last few years. And with a very interesting cast like Stephen Yeun, Mark Ruffalo, Toni Collette, this could be really interesting. But I was nervous because this movie kept getting pushed around. This movie was supposed to come out last year, and then they were just straight up saying, oh, we're delaying this movie because of the strikes and such. And they also kind of moved it around throughout 2025 and such. Like it was supposed to come out in January, then they moved it to April, then they were just like, fine, we'll just put it in March and such. And I saw the movie, and this is a weird one because there are aspects of this movie that I do like and I would recommend. But there are aspects of this movie that keep me from loving this movie much, unlike some of the other Bong Joon-ho movies. Like Bong Joon-ho's movies I've really enjoyed ever since seeing Parasite. After I watched that movie, I'm like, I gotta see what the rest of this guy's films and such. So I watched Snowpiercer, Okja, Memories of Murder. Dude is a fantastic director, and it's kind of disappointing that this is one of his not so great efforts. Now, I will be fair and talk about the things I do like about this movie first. First off, I do think the actors do a fantastic job, particularly Robert Pattinson. This is another tour de force performance by him, especially considering he's playing multiple versions of his character. Mickey 17 is very sympathetic. He's very fun. He's really good in this performance. He's also really good at Mickey 18 as well. And the movie, at least, it's easy to tell who is who based on like which facial expressions they're using and such. And I do think that's very well done. I do think he's a very gifted actor. I'll see anything he's in at this point. The other actors aren't nearly as strong. Naomi Ackie, I thought at first she was kind of a bland, generic girlfriend of main character and such. And by the time that the second act rolls around, I'm like, okay, I'm actually starting to like her character a lot more. Stephen Yeun is also pretty fun as Mickey's de facto best friend. Um, it's again, when it gets to the second act, you'll kind of see like some of the other sides of his character and such. Toni Collette and Mark Ruffalo are interesting because their performances are clearly over the top. They're clearly cartoonish, and reading up on it, it's like, oh, Bong Joon Ho said they were supposed to be inspired by some anime characters that were like villains and such, and I'm like, okay, fine, it makes sense. They're chewing the scenery quite a bit. It does work in the movie overall, and I do like seeing those two. This is like, if you were expecting Mark Ruffalo and Poor Things in this movie, when I say chewing the scenery, it's not quite that performance. Meanwhile, the movie is admittedly pretty funny. A lot of Bong Joon-ho's movies are pretty funny in like a very dry and very dark kind of way, and this movie is definitely in league with that. There are moments where I'm kind of just laughing at some of the various scenes in the movie. Like my favorite line was like Mark Ruffalo, he goes, oh, thanks for inviting me. It's like, sir, you're being subpoenaed. I'm like, okay, that's pretty funny. And meanwhile, the movie does become unpredictable. Now, I know this is based off a book. I have not read the book, so I can't tell how close it is as an adaptation. I can only talk about this as a movie. I did not know where exactly this movie was going. And I do like that, at least, where it's like, you know, I'm kind of getting sick and tired of movies where it's like, okay, I can see everything. I'm literally 10 steps ahead of you. And this movie at least doesn't do that. I at least was invested enough and aware enough. It's like, okay, I'm getting involved with the story, and I kind of just don't know where this is going. And I do think that the production values of this movie are very interesting as well because they don't really put an emphasis on it. Because, like, obviously, this is very dystopian. Everything's not supposed to look great. And I think because that, it admittedly does not look great. Like, the cinematography is a little grayish at times. But I do think that kind of works with the movie overall because, like, again, the society is not very, very good, honestly. And the production design as well, again, it's not very elaborate. It's more commercial-esque. Like, I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but like it's not very detail oriented, but again, I think that kind of works in the movie's it works in the movie's favor, honestly. Like space travel is very, very bad in this movie. And again, I do think that kind of works in the movie to its advantage. And also, the score is very interesting as well because like there are definitely different types of like music that is kind of being thrown throughout this movie. It's like the score kind of changes throughout the entire movie. And like that's kind of interesting. I thought I was like, okay, is this kind of based on like what Mickey's kind of feeling right now? It's like kind of, yeah, but it is very well done overall. It's definitely interesting. Now let's talk about the issues that kind of kept me from really loving this movie. First off, the pacing issues. This movie is 2 hours and 17 minutes long, and honestly, you could have trimmed off a lot of this or tightened a bunch of stuff because, like, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that kind of keeps dragging on and on. It's like, we kind of get it at this point. The movie could have been 2 hours easily, and it would have been just fine. But no, the movie drags out several scenes, and it kind of just doesn't need to. I think basically the epilogue in this movie kind of just drags out quite a bit. And again, I try not to say there's no such thing as a movie that's too short or too long, but yeah, this is one of those times where this movie's too long. But then again, I sat through The Brutalist, and that was 3.5 hours long, and it felt like nothing at times. So the fact that this movie is an hour shorter, that's not great. Also, the movie is not very subtle. Something I really enjoyed about Bong Joon-ho's movies is that how subtle they can be. Like when you watch them a second time and something clicks, and it's like, oh, how did I not notice that before? That was a really good clue to what's later on in the movie. In this movie, I feel like there's not a lot of subtlety. Like you'll kind of see it very early on. I won't go into specifics, but like once you see a prop in this movie, it's clearly obvious who they're trying to make fun of. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to make fun of them too, but it's not very subtle in how they're doing it. It's like I feel like you guys should be better than this, but then again, the person you're making fun of is not better than anything. So also, I also don't really like the fact that they don't really show a lot of the Mickeys themselves. Like, okay, so obviously the main characters are Mickey 17 and 18, so they're the 17th version and the 18th version of this character and such. And you only really see the other Mickeys when they're being killed off, and I felt that was kind of disheartening at times. Now, I'm not saying it should have focused on all these Mickeys and such, but maybe we could have gotten to know Mickey a little bit more and how his character progressed a little bit if we saw a little bit more of the Mickeys. Plus, I would have gotten to see more Robert Pattinson action. I should rephrase that, but I'm not going to. Yeah, that was kind of disappointing. So Mickey 17, it again, it's a weird one. The acting is pretty good. Robert Pattinson pretty much carries this entire movie on his own. The other actors do a decent job. It is fun. It is funny at times. It can be very unpredictable. The production design is again not in your face. It's not clearly like too glamorous. It's just drab enough. It's just it works in its favor. It looks interesting. The score is very interesting. Again, very interesting movie, but a very uneven movie. The pacing issues are obvious. It's a little too long at times. It's not very subtle. I kind of wish they kind of explored some more actions of the Mickey character a little bit more. But again, it's a mixed bag. I want to say see it, and I want to say this is a really amazing movie, and this is in line with Bong Joon Ho's other movies. But I'm not going to, unfortunately. It's definitely worth watching at some point, which is why I kind of have the stream it rating. So that's kind of what I'll give it. I'll give it a very high stream it. I'll give it 2.5 out of 4 stars stream it. So, what is your favorite movie starring Robert Pattinson? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.